The silence in the Grand Assembly Hall felt heavy like a thick blanket. 10,000 representatives from across the galaxy sat in their assigned seats, but nobody spoke. The war was over, and everyone knew it had changed everything. Counselor Alar's 4 eyes blinked slowly as he looked at the documents spread before him. His people, the Vorthons, had been keeping galactic peace for 3,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall, witnessed countless wars, and mediated disputes between species that could barely understand each other. But this was different. This war had broken every rule they thought they knew about conflict. The humans had won. That simple fact made no sense to anyone in the room. 6 months ago, the Hegemony Alliance had been the strongest military force in known space. 47 different species working together, with technology that could crack planets and ships that moved faster than most civilizations could even detect. They had ruled over 200 star systems and commanded fleets that numbered in the millions. The humans had been nobody. A single species from a small blue planet that had barely learned to travel between stars. They had 7 colonies and maybe 1,000 ships total. When the hegemony decided to expand into human space, every expert in the galaxy predicted the war would last exactly 17 days. The humans would surrender after losing their first major battle, just like every other primitive species had done before them. Instead, the Hegemony Alliance no longer existed. Alar touched a control on his desk, and a holographic image appeared above the assembly floor. It showed the final battle statistics. The numbers still seemed impossible. The humans had been outnumbered 50-1. Their technology was centuries behind their enemies. Their ships were smaller, slower, and weaker. Yet somehow they had not just survived, but completely destroyed their opponents. A low murmur ran through the assembled delegates. Many of them had been allies of the hegemony. Others had traded with them for generations. Some had feared them. Now they all feared something else entirely, the humans. Admiral Reeves sat in the witness section, looking completely relaxed. His uniform was simple and clean, nothing like the elaborate ceremonial dress that other military leaders wore to important events. He had short gray hair and tired eyes, but when he smiled at the nervous delegates around him, many of them shivered. Next to him sat Captain Stone, younger but with the same unsettling calm. She had commanded one of the human fleets during the war, and her ship had personally destroyed 6 hegemony battle stations. The report said she had been laughing during the final engagement. Alar stood up, his tall frame casting a shadow across the floor. The Vorthon species had evolved from tree-dwelling creatures, and even in a modern setting, he moved with the fluid grace of something that had once swung through forests. His voice carried clearly through the hall without amplification. "We gather today not to celebrate victory or mourn defeat," he said. "We gather because we must understand what has happened. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a primitive species has not just defeated an advanced civilization, but has done so in ways that challenge our basic understanding of warfare itself." He gestured toward the human delegation. "The representatives of Earth have agreed to this inquiry. They have also arranged for 10 witnesses to testify about what they observed during the conflict. These witnesses come from different species and served in various capacities during the war. Their testimonies will help us understand how this unprecedented victory was achieved." Admiral Reeves stood up slowly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but somehow carried to every corner of the massive hall. "Counselor Alar, we appreciate the opportunity to participate in this tribunal. My species values learning and knowledge above all else. We believe that understanding leads to better relationships between civilizations." Something about the way he said better. Relationships made several delegates lean back in their seats. However, the Admiral continued, "I must point out that from our perspective, this was not an unprecedented victory. It was simply the natural outcome of applying human military doctrine to a standard conflict situation. We are happy to share our methods and tactics with the galactic community, as we believe in the free exchange of information." Captain Stone nodded beside him. "We learned a great deal from this experience," she added. "We hope future collaborations will be even more educational." The 2 humans sat back down, still looking perfectly at ease. Alar noticed that other delegates were whispering among themselves now, their conversations growing more urgent. The casual way the humans spoke about the complete destruction of the Hegemony Alliance was somehow more disturbing than if they had boasted or threatened. Alar raised one of his hands for silence. The first witness is prepared to testify. Commander Thel of the Meridian Collective will describe what he observed during the Battle of Proxima Station. A tall, blue-skinned figure moved toward the testimony platform. The Meridians were an aquatic species, and Thel still wore the specialized breathing apparatus that allowed him to survive in the station's atmosphere. His large, dark eyes moved nervously between the human delegation and the assembled council. As Thel began to speak, Alar reviewed his notes one more time. The Meridians were known throughout the galaxy as excellent tactical analysts. Their underwater cities had been dealing with three-dimensional warfare for thousands of years, before most species had even developed flight. If anyone could explain human tactics, it would be a Meridian, but Alar had already read Thel's preliminary report. The Meridian commander had used the word impossible 47 times in 12 pages. He had requested permission to revise his statements 3 times, claiming that his observations could not be accurate. Finally, he had submitted the report with a note stating that he could only describe what he had seen, not explain how it had happened. Looking around the assembly hall, Alar could see the same confusion and concern on thousands of faces, representatives who had lived for centuries, who had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations, who had thought they understood how the galaxy worked, were all struggling with the same impossible question. How had a species that had barely learned to travel between stars managed to defeat the most powerful military alliance in known space? And more importantly, what did it mean for the rest of them that humans were now looking for their next educational experience? The tribunal was about to find out. Commander Thel's breathing apparatus made soft bubbling sounds as he struggled to find the right words. The Meridian officer had been floating in the command center of his observation ship when the Battle of Proxima Station began. And even now, months later, his large eyes still held the shock of what he had witnessed. The humans approached Proxima Station from 7 different directions, Thel began, his voice carrying the liquid quality of his underwater speech patterns. Standard tactical doctrine suggests that when facing a fortified position with superior firepower, an attacking force should concentrate their strength at the weakest point. Every military academy in the galaxy teaches this principle. He paused, looking directly at the human delegation. Admiral Reeves nodded encouragingly, as if he were a teacher waiting for a student to continue a lesson. The humans split their fleet into groups of 1 and 2 ships, Thel continued. They attacked from every direction simultaneously, but not with any pattern we could understand. Some groups charged directly at the heaviest defenses. Others hung back and seemed to be watching. Several human pilots flew their fighters in what appeared to be random loops around the station's defense grid. Counselor Alar leaned forward. Surely their fleet commander was attempting some form of coordinated strategy. Thel's breathing apparatus bubbled more rapidly. That is what we assumed. My analysis team spent the entire battle trying to predict their next move based on standard tactical models. We failed completely. The humans were not following any strategy that existed in our databases. The Meridian commander activated a holographic display that showed the battle from his ship's perspective. The assembled delegates watched as small human vessels darted between massive hegemony weapons platforms like insects around giant flowers. This fighter pilot here, Thel pointed to a dot of light on the display. She flew directly into the overlapping fire zones of 4 defense platforms. Her ship was damaged within seconds. According to every tactical analysis system we possess, she should have retreated or been destroyed. The dot of light continued moving toward the station, its path becoming more erratic as weapons fire converged on it. Instead, she began transmitting on all frequencies, not a distress call or a request for support. She was singing, a human war song about death and glory. As she flew into certain destruction, she was entertaining herself with music. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The concept of finding entertainment in mortal combat was alien to most species present. Her sacrifice destroyed 1 defense platform and damaged 2 others, Thel continued. But that is not the disturbing part. The disturbing part is that 7 other human pilots immediately volunteered to make similar attacks. They were competing with each other for the opportunity to die in the most effective way possible. The holographic display shifted to show another part of the battle. A human destroyer was ramming itself into a hegemony battlecruiser, both ships exploding in a brilliant flash. Captain Stone's vessel, Thel said, nodding toward the human officer in the witness section. Her ship was heavily damaged and facing 3 enemy cruisers. Standard protocol would be to request support or withdraw to a safe distance. Instead, she ordered full power to engines and rammed the largest enemy vessel. Captain Stone smiled and waved at the assembly. Many delegates instinctively moved away from her. The impact destroyed both ships, Thel continued, but Captain Stone and most of her crew survived in escape pods. As they were being rescued, they were discussing modifications to their next ship that would make ramming attacks more effective. They spoke about their destroyed vessel the way engineers discuss a successful experiment. Counselor Alar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep confusion among his people. Commander Thel, you observed this battle from a safe distance with advanced sensors and analysis equipment. In your professional opinion, were the humans following any recognizable military doctrine? The Meridian officer was quiet for a long moment. Counselor, my species has been studying warfare for over 4,000 years. We have observed conflicts involving every major civilization in this part of the galaxy. We understand the tactical principles that govern space combat, and we can predict the likely outcomes of various strategic approaches. He looked again at the human delegation. The humans were not following military doctrine. They were improvising. Each ship, each pilot, each crew member was making independent decisions based on immediate circumstances. They had no central strategy beyond winning at any cost. It should have resulted in chaos and defeat. But it did not, Alar observed. No, it did not. The humans achieved perfect coordination without any apparent coordination. They supported each other without being ordered to do so. They sacrificed themselves to create opportunities for their fellow humans to exploit, and they did so instantly, without hesitation or discussion. Thel deactivated the holographic display. Counselor, in my opinion, the humans were not waging war. They were playing. And they were very, very good at their game. The next witness approached the platform before Thel had even finished returning to his seat. Engineer Kayla moved with the precise mechanical gait of her crystalline species. Her body was composed of living silicon compounds that formed geometric patterns across her surface, and when she spoke, her voice had the clear, ringing quality of struck crystal. I observed human engineering capabilities during the asteroid belt ambush, Kayla announced without preamble. My species values efficiency and proper tool usage above all other considerations. We design equipment for specific purposes and use it accordingly. This approach has served us well for millennia. She activated her own holographic display, showing the asteroid belt where human mining operations had been established before the war. The humans had been mining these asteroids for approximately 57 standard years. Kayla continued. They possessed standard industrial equipment, drilling platforms, cargo haulers, processing facilities, and basic defensive systems. When the hegemony fleet arrived to claim this territory, they expected to face these mining tools in their intended configuration. The display showed massive hegemony warships moving into the asteroid field, their sensors scanning for defensive positions and weapon emplacements. The humans had repurposed everything, Kayla said. Mining lasers became weapons. Cargo haulers became missile platforms. Processing facilities became manufacturing centers for improvised explosives. They had turned an entire industrial operation into a weapon system in less than 3 days. Admiral Reeves spoke up from his seat. If I may, Engineer Kayla, we prefer the term adaptive utilization to repurposing. We believe every tool has multiple potential applications. Kayla's crystalline structure flickered with colors that indicated confusion. Admiral, your people converted ore refineries into particle beam weapons. That is not adaptation. That is complete reimagining of fundamental design principles. We thought it was obvious, Captain Stone added helpfully. Ore refineries concentrate and direct energy. Particle beam weapons concentrate and direct energy. The basic physics are the same. The basic physics are completely different. Kayla's voice rose to a higher pitch, creating harmonics that made several delegates cover their ears. Your modifications should have resulted in catastrophic system failures. Your improvised weapons should have exploded the moment you activated them. Some of them did, Admiral Reeves acknowledged. We learned from those failures and improved our designs. Kayla's display showed the actual battle, with human mining platforms firing beams of concentrated energy at hegemony warships while cargo haulers launched clouds of improvised missiles. The humans used gravitational slingshots to accelerate asteroid fragments to incredible velocities, Kayla continued. They turned the asteroid belt itself into ammunition. My engineering analysis indicates that they calculated these trajectories in real time, adjusting for the gravitational effects of multiple celestial bodies while under enemy fire. The display showed rocks the size of buildings smashing into hegemony vessels at significant fractions of light speed. This level of engineering improvisation should be impossible, Kayla stated. My species has never observed any civilization that could so completely reconceptualize their technology during active combat operations. She turned to face the human delegation directly.
How do your engineers design equipment that can be so easily modified?
Admiral Reeves smiled. We design everything to be flexible from the beginning. We assume that any tool will eventually need to do something we did not originally intend. But why? Kayla asked. Because that is how we think, Captain Stone replied. Why would we build something that could only do one thing when we could build something that could do many things? The final witness of this session was already moving toward the platform. Medical Officer Dren represented the Insectoid Collective, and her compound eyes reflected the assembly hall's lights in thousands of tiny rainbows. Her people communicated through a combination of pheromones and high-frequency clicks, but she had learned to speak in standard galactic for diplomatic purposes. I observed human medical practices during the siege of Europa, Dren began, her mandibles clicking between words. My hive mind specializes in emergency medicine and battlefield surgery. We have developed efficient techniques for treating combat injuries and maintaining fighting effectiveness in wounded soldiers. Her display showed a human medical facility during active combat operations. The humans do not treat injuries, Dren stated. They ignore them. I observed human soldiers continuing to fight with wounds that should have rendered them unconscious. I documented cases of humans performing complex tactical maneuvers while missing limbs. The display showed a human pilot whose left arm had been severed at the shoulder, still operating his fighter's controls with his remaining hand and feet. This soldier flew for 37 minutes after losing his arm, Dren continued. He completed 4 attack runs and destroyed 2 enemy vessels before finally accepting medical treatment. When I asked him why he had not retreated when injured, he seemed confused by the question. Several delegates were making notes furiously. The idea of continuing combat operations while seriously wounded was incomprehensible to most species. The humans also perform surgery on themselves, Dren added. During the siege, I witnessed a human engineer remove a piece of shrapnel from her own abdomen, seal the wound with industrial adhesive, and return to repairing critical systems. She completed her repairs before allowing medical personnel to treat her properly. Admiral Reeves nodded approvingly. Engineer Martinez did excellent work under difficult circumstances. She saved 17 lives by keeping life support operational. She should have been dead. Dren's clicks became more rapid. The wound she sustained would have killed any member of my species within minutes. Her continuing to work should have been physiologically impossible. Humans are very stubborn, Captain Stone offered. We do not like to leave tasks unfinished. Dren's compound eyes focused on the human delegation. My species has studied pain tolerance and physical resilience across hundreds of civilizations. Humans exceed every established baseline by factors that should not be survivable. You continue fighting under conditions that would incapacitate creatures twice your size and strength. We have good reasons to keep fighting, Admiral Reeves replied. What reasons? Dren asked. The Admiral's smile became wider. Because fighting is interesting. Counselor Alar called for a recess as confused murmurs spread throughout the assembly hall. The first 3 witnesses had revealed tactical improvisation, engineering creativity, and physical resilience that defied galactic understanding. But they had only begun to scratch the surface of what made humans so terrifyingly effective in warfare. The next session would explore the psychological aspects of human combat, and many delegates were already wondering if they really wanted to know what they were about to learn. The assembly hall felt different when the session resumed. Word of the morning's testimonies had spread throughout the station, and now reporters from dozens of news networks were broadcasting live coverage across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to understand how humans had achieved the impossible, but the witnesses were describing something far stranger than anyone had expected. Intelligence analyst Moore glided toward the testimony platform with the fluid grace characteristic of his species. The Greys had evolved in low-gravity environments, and their elongated limbs and large heads made them appear fragile to most observers. But their telepathic abilities made them the galaxy's most effective intelligence gatherers, and Moore had been monitoring hegemony communications throughout the entire war. I monitored all human military transmissions during the conflict, Moore began, his voice carrying the slight echo that indicated he was simultaneously translating his telepathic thoughts into spoken language. My species has developed sophisticated techniques for analyzing communication patterns, emotional content, and psychological states based on transmitted data. We can typically predict military behavior by examining how commanders speak to their subordinates under stress. He activated a holographic display showing wave patterns that represented human radio communications. During various battles, the humans presented us with a complete anomaly. Moore continued. Standard military psychology suggests that soldiers become less effective as casualties increase. Commanders should become more cautious when facing superior forces. Communication patterns should reflect increasing stress, fear, and desperation as a conflict progresses unfavorably. The display showed the emotional analysis of human transmissions over time, with spikes and valleys representing different psychological states. The humans displayed the opposite pattern, Moore said. Their communications became more relaxed as the war continued. They showed increasing confidence when facing impossible odds. Their stress levels decreased as their casualties mounted. Counselor Alar studied the display carefully. Analyst Moore, are you suggesting that humans become calmer when facing death? Not calmer, Counselor, happier. Moore's large eyes blinked slowly. I recorded instances of human commanders joking about their own imminent destruction. I documented cases where human soldiers sang cheerful songs while surrounded by enemy forces. During the final battle, when human losses exceeded 60%, their communications were filled with laughter. Several delegates exchanged worried glances. The concept of finding joy in desperate circumstances was alien to most species. I will play a sample of human military communications from the Battle of the Outer Rim, Moore announced. This transmission occurred when a human destroyer was surrounded by 12 enemy vessels. The crew had no possibility of escape or survival. The hall filled with crackling static. Then a clear human voice speaking in their native language with a translation overlay. This is Commander Harris to all units. We are about to engage 12 bogies with one ship. I want everyone to know that this is exactly the kind of stupid plan that makes life worth living. Let's see how many of them we can take with us. The transmission was followed by sounds that the translation system identified as human laughter and music. Commander Harris destroyed 4 enemy vessels before his ship was finally overwhelmed, Moore explained. His final transmission was him humming a tune and commenting that the explosion patterns were quite pretty. Admiral Reeves smiled nostalgically. Commander Harris was always an optimist. He found beauty in unexpected places. He found beauty in his own death. Moore's telepathic emanations were strong enough that several sensitive species in the audience winced. My analysis indicates that humans actually become more effective combatants when facing impossible odds. Your species appears to be psychologically designed for hopeless situations. Captain Stone nodded. We have a saying. The difficult we do immediately. The impossible takes a little longer. We prefer challenges that other people think cannot be overcome. But why? Moore asked, his telepathic confusion washing over the nearby delegates. Because, Admiral Reeves replied, overcoming impossible challenges is the most interesting thing we have discovered in the universe. The next witness was already approaching the platform. Communications Officer Yara moved like flowing liquid fire, her plasma-based physiology creating small light displays as she walked. Her species existed as organized energy patterns, and she had been able to intercept and analyze electromagnetic communications across multiple dimensions during the war. I monitored the complete spectrum of human military communications, Yara began, her voice sounding like controlled static. My energy-based physiology allows me to perceive electromagnetic patterns that solid-based species cannot detect. I was able to intercept not only official military transmissions, but also personal communications between human soldiers. Her display showed a complex web of communication channels, with thousands of interconnected transmission paths linking human forces across multiple star systems. The humans maintained constant personal communication during combat operations, Yara continued. Soldiers spoke with their families, friends, and colleagues while actively engaged in battle. This should have created dangerous distractions and reduced combat effectiveness. The display zoomed in on specific communication threads, showing the content of human conversations during active combat. Instead, these personal communications appeared to increase human fighting effectiveness, Yara stated. Soldiers who received messages from home fought more aggressively. Crews who maintained contact with their families showed improved coordination and tactical performance. She highlighted a specific transmission thread. This communication occurred during the siege of Europa. A human fighter pilot was engaged in combat while simultaneously receiving updates about his daughter's school performance and his spouse's cooking experiments. The translated conversation appeared on the display. Yes, dear, I can see the explosion from here. Tell Emma that I am proud of her mathematics scores. Did you try adding the spice I mentioned? Oh, excuse me for a moment, I need to dodge this missile. Several delegates stared at the display in bewilderment. The concept of maintaining family conversations during life-or-death combat was completely outside their understanding. The pilot's combat performance improved during this conversation, Yara continued. He destroyed 3 enemy fighters while discussing his family's daily activities. He appeared to draw strength and focus from reminders of what he was fighting to protect. Family connections are very important to humans, Admiral Reeves explained. Knowing that our loved ones are safe and happy helps us concentrate on our duties. But how can you maintain emotional connections while killing enemy soldiers? Yara asked, her plasma form flickering with confusion. The same way we maintain emotional connections while doing any other job, Captain Stone replied. Fighting is what we do, not who we are. Our relationships with our families are more important than our relationships with our enemies. Yara's display shifted to show another communication pattern. I also intercepted human gambling activities during combat operations. Soldiers were placing bets on various aspects of their battles while actively participating in those same battles. The translation system displayed several examples. I bet you 10 credits that I can disable that cruiser's engines with 1 shot. 20 credits says we can clear this asteroid field in under 5 minutes. 50 credits says the captain rams something before this battle is over. The humans were treating warfare as entertainment, Yara observed. They were finding ways to make combat more interesting by adding elements of personal competition and achievement. Admiral Reeves chuckled. A little friendly competition never hurt anyone. Well, anyone on our side anyway. This psychological approach should have resulted in decreased discipline and tactical effectiveness, Yara insisted. Soldiers who are gambling and joking should not be able to maintain professional combat performance. Professional combat performance is boring, Captain Stone explained. We prefer inspired combat performance. A little excitement helps us do our best work. The final witness of this session moved toward the platform with the slow, deliberate steps of his herbivore species. Cultural attaché Nix represented the Peaceful Federation, a coalition of civilizations that had avoided military conflicts for over 2,000 years. His people served as neutral observers and mediators, and their complete commitment to nonviolence made them trusted witnesses in disputes involving warfare. I observed human cultural practices and rituals during the war, Nix began, his gentle voice barely carrying across the hall. My species has studied the ceremonial aspects of warfare across hundreds of civilizations. We have documented how different cultures honor their dead, motivate their living, and process the psychological trauma of combat. His display showed images of human military ceremonies and gatherings during the conflict. Human war rituals are unlike anything we have previously observed, Nix continued. Most species honor their fallen warriors with solemn ceremonies that emphasize loss, sacrifice, and the tragedy of death. These rituals typically encourage survivors to avoid future conflicts when possible. The display showed a human memorial service taking place on a military vessel during active combat operations. The humans honor their dead by becoming more aggressive, Nix observed. They hold ceremonies that celebrate the achievements of fallen comrades and inspire survivors to fight harder. Their mourning rituals are designed to increase combat effectiveness rather than promote healing and peace. The image showed human soldiers raising glasses in a toast while laser fire flashed outside the ship's windows. I observed one ceremony where human soldiers commemorated a fallen comrade by attacking an enemy position that everyone agreed was too heavily defended to assault, Nix continued. They claimed they were finishing what he started and making his sacrifice count. The attack succeeded, but only because the humans fought with complete disregard for their own safety. Several peaceful species in the assembly were making distressed sounds. The concept of honoring the dead by creating more death was deeply disturbing to civilizations that valued life above all else. Human commanders regularly read casualty reports to their troops, Nix added. But instead of using these reports to emphasize the costs of war, they use them to motivate continued fighting. They speak of their losses as debts to be repaid and scores to be settled. Admiral Reeves nodded solemnly. We never forget those who gave their lives for our cause. Their sacrifices inspire us to achieve victories worthy of their memory. But this approach should create a cycle of escalating violence, Nix protested. Each loss should motivate greater aggression, leading to greater losses, leading to even greater aggression. This psychological pattern should result in the complete destruction of your military forces. It might, Captain Stone agreed, but it also results in the complete destruction of our enemies. We consider that an acceptable trade-off. Nix's display showed human soldiers performing what appeared to be recreational activities during brief pauses in combat operations. The humans also engage in leisure activities during warfare, Nix observed. They play games, tell stories, create art, and compose music while surrounded by death and destruction. They appear to find combat situations relaxing rather than stressful. The display showed a group of human Marines playing cards while explosions could be heard in the background. I recorded instances of humans writing poetry about their battles, creating musical compositions inspired by enemy weapon sounds, and painting portraits of their destroyed opponents. Nix continued. They treat warfare as a source of artistic inspiration. War is the ultimate human experience, Admiral Reeves explained. It challenges every aspect of our capabilities, physical, mental, emotional, and creative. It brings out the best and worst in people, often simultaneously. Of course, we find it inspiring. But war destroys civilizations, Nix said quietly. War ends cultures, eliminates species, and reduces complex societies to rubble. How can you find inspiration in something so destructive? Admiral Reeves was quiet for a moment, then smiled. Because cultural attaché Nix, destruction is also a form of creation. When we destroy our enemies, we create opportunities for our friends. When we destroy old ways of thinking, we create space for new ideas. War teaches us what we are truly capable of achieving when everything we value is at stake. Captain Stone added. Besides, someone was going to destroy the hegemony eventually. We just made sure it was us instead of them. Counselor Allard called for another recess as the assembly struggled to process what they had learned. The psychological aspects of human warfare were even more disturbing than their tactical capabilities. The humans did not just tolerate the stress and trauma of combat. They thrived on it. They found joy in impossible circumstances, strength in personal connections, and inspiration in destruction itself. The next session would explore human adaptability and technological improvisation. But many delegates were beginning to wonder if they really wanted to understand creatures who treated galactic warfare as an enjoyable learning experience. Emergency sessions had been called across the galaxy as news of the tribunal spread. Military academies were suspending classes to analyze the testimonies. Scientific institutions were forming committees to study human psychology. Several smaller civilizations had quietly moved their fleets to defensive positions, just in case humanity decided to continue their educational experiences in new directions. Weapons specialist Ran approached the testimony platform with the measured stride of a born warrior. His reptilian species had evolved from apex predators, and their natural aggression had been refined over millennia into disciplined military excellence. The Draknari were respected throughout the galaxy as master weaponsmiths and tactical specialists, which made Rand's obvious nervousness all the more unsettling to the assembled delegates. I examined human weapons and technology captured during various engagements, Rand began, his voice carrying the hissing undertones of his native language. My species has been designing and analyzing military equipment for over 5,000 years. We pride ourselves on understanding the principles that govern effective weapon systems and defensive technologies. His scaled hands moved over the control interface, bringing up a holographic display of various human weapons and equipment pieces arranged on examination tables. The humans do not design weapons, Rand stated. They design tools that become weapons when necessary. Every piece of equipment I examined had been modified, adapted or completely reimagined from its original purpose. The display focused on what appeared to be a standard mining tool that had been extensively modified with additional components and improvised attachments. This device was originally designed for asteroid extraction operations, Rand continued. The humans had converted it into a personal defense weapon capable of firing projectiles at hypersonic velocities. According to my analysis, these modifications should have been impossible to implement without specialized manufacturing facilities and months of engineering development. Admiral Reeves leaned forward in his seat. If I may, Specialist Ran, Sergeant Chen made those modifications in about 6 hours using spare parts from a damaged cargo hauler. She was quite proud of her work. Rand's reptilian eyes focused on the Admiral with predatory intensity. Admiral, the mathematical calculations required to redesign the power coupling alone should have taken weeks. The metallurgical analysis necessary to ensure the modified components could withstand the increased stress loads requires sophisticated laboratory equipment. Sergeant Chen is very good at math, Captain Stone offered helpfully, and she has excellent intuition about how materials behave under stress. Most humans develop that kind of practical engineering sense through experience. Most humans? Rand's voice rose in pitch, creating harmonics that made several delegates instinctively reach for weapons they were not carrying. Are you suggesting that this level of technological improvisation is common among your species? Well, yes, Admiral Reeves replied. We encourage all military personnel to understand their equipment well enough to modify it when circumstances require adaptation. Standard training includes basic engineering, principles, and materials science. Rand's display shifted to show a collection of improvised weapons and equipment modifications that human forces had created during the war. I documented over 3,000 separate instances of technological adaptation during the conflict, Rand continued. Humans converted civilian electronics into military communication systems. They turned medical equipment into weapons. They used entertainment devices as components in targeting systems. They appeared to view every piece of technology as raw material for creating something else. The display showed a device that had clearly started as some kind of kitchen appliance, but now bristled with additional components and glowed with an ominous energy field. This food preparation unit was converted into a plasma cannon, Rand explained. The modification process involved completely rewiring the power systems, redesigning the containment chamber, and adding components that did not exist in any database. The resulting weapon had better performance characteristics than most purpose-built military systems. Several delegates were taking frantic notes. The ability to convert civilian technology into military equipment on demand represented a level of adaptability that could render traditional concepts of disarmament completely meaningless. Human soldiers also modified, captured enemy equipment during active combat operations, Rand added. They would examine alien weapon systems for minutes, then begin making improvements to their performance and reliability. Admiral Reeves nodded approvingly. Enemy equipment often has interesting design features that we can learn from. We like to study different approaches to problem solving. But how do you understand alien technology well enough to improve it? Rand demanded. These weapons were designed by species with completely different technological development paths. Their operating principles should be incomprehensible to creatures who evolved in different environments with different scientific foundations. Technology is just applied physics, Captain Stone explained. Physics works the same way everywhere in the universe. Once you understand what a device is trying to accomplish, figuring out how to make it work better is usually pretty straightforward. Rand's display showed recordings of human engineers working on captured alien equipment, their hands moving confidently over unfamiliar controls and components. I observed humans making successful modifications to technology they had never seen before, Rand stated. They improved weapon accuracy, increased energy efficiency, and enhanced durability using techniques that did not appear in any technical documentation. They seemed to understand these systems better than their original designers. We have a different perspective, Admiral Reeves said. The original designers were trying to build something that met their specific requirements. We were trying to build something that would kill their creators. That kind of motivation tends to focus the mind wonderfully. The next witness was already taking position at the platform, Strategic analyst Pex moved with the careful deliberation of his ancient species. The observers had been watching galactic conflicts for millions of years, documenting the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Their vast experience and analytical capabilities made them the galaxy's most respected authorities on military strategy and tactical development. "I witnessed the Battle of the Outer Rim," Pex announced, his voice carrying the weight of eons. This engagement occurred when human forces encountered a technologically superior enemy fleet in an advantageous defensive position. Standard strategic analysis indicated that the humans should have either retreated or attempted to bypass the enemy force entirely. His holographic display showed the initial tactical situation, with human ships vastly outnumbered and outgunned by hegemony forces positioned around a heavily fortified asteroid base. The humans spent exactly 72 hours in apparent inactivity, Pex continued. They maintained their position at the edge of the system, conducting what appeared to be routine maintenance and training exercises. My analysis suggested they were either waiting for reinforcements or preparing to withdraw. The display showed human ships moving in seemingly random patterns, conducting what looked like routine fleet maneuvers. During this period, I monitored their communications and detected no signs of strategic planning or tactical preparation, Pex added. The humans appeared to be engaged in recreational activities, educational discussions, and personal correspondence. Several ship crews were conducting what they called movie nights and cooking competitions. Admiral Reeves smiled. "Morale is very important during extended operations. We believe in keeping our people relaxed and entertained while they work." "While they work?" Pex's ancient eyes fixed on the Admiral. "What work were they performing during this period?" "Learning," Captain Stone replied. "We were studying our opponents to understand how they thought and fought. You cannot defeat an enemy effectively until you understand their strengths and weaknesses." Pex's display shifted. To show the actual battle that followed the 3-day observation period, the human attack began without warning and followed no recognizable strategic pattern, Pex stated. Instead of concentrating their forces against weak points or attempting to outflank the enemy position, they attacked everywhere simultaneously with perfect coordination. The display showed human ships moving in complex, interwoven patterns that seemed to anticipate and counter every defensive move the enemy made. The humans exploited micro-weaknesses in the enemy formation that my analytical systems had not detected. Pex continued. They identified timing gaps in defensive fire patterns that lasted for fractions of seconds. They predicted the exact moments when enemy commanders would make specific tactical decisions, and they positioned their forces to take advantage of those decisions before they were made. Several strategic specialists in the assembly were studying the display with intense concentration, trying to understand how the humans had achieved such precise tactical coordination. The engagement lasted 17 minutes, Pex announced. The technologically superior enemy force was completely destroyed with minimal human casualties. My analysis indicates that the humans achieved victory through perfect understanding of their opponent's capabilities and limitations. Counselor Alar studied the tactical display carefully. Analyst Pex, how were the humans able to predict enemy behavior with such accuracy? By studying them, Admiral Reeves answered before Pex could respond. We watched how they moved, how they communicated, how they responded to different situations. People develop patterns of behavior even in combat. Once you understand someone's patterns, you can predict what they will do next. But this level of behavioral analysis should require months or years of observation, Pex protested. You achieved perfect tactical prediction in 72 hours. We are very good students, Captain Stone explained. And we had excellent teachers. The enemy demonstrated their tactical preferences every time they adjusted their defensive positions or responded to our presence. We just paid attention to what they were showing us. The final witness approached the platform with movements that seemed to flow like wind through leaves. Environmental Monitor Gix belonged to a plant-based collective consciousness that existed as a living ecosystem, spread across multiple worlds. Their unique physiology allowed them to survive in environments that would instantly kill most other forms of life, making them ideal observers for extreme combat situations. I monitored human operations in hostile environments throughout the war, Gix began, their voice carrying the rustling quality of moving vegetation. My collective consciousness maintains monitoring stations in radiation fields, toxic atmospheres, and vacuum conditions that other species cannot survive. We observed human forces operating in environments that should have been immediately lethal. The holographic display showed various extreme environments where combat had occurred: asteroid fields with lethal radiation levels, gas giant atmospheres filled with corrosive chemicals, and the hard vacuum of deep space. Humans fought effectively in conditions that exceed the survival parameters of every other known species, Gix continued. I documented cases of human soldiers continuing combat operations after their life support systems failed. Their protective equipment was damaged, and their ships were depressurized. The display focused on a recording of human Marines fighting inside a damaged space station where atmosphere was venting into space, and radiation levels would have killed most creatures within minutes. These soldiers continued their mission for 37 minutes in hard vacuum, Gix stated. They used hand signals to coordinate their movements and completed their objective of securing the station's reactor core before finally succumbing to environmental exposure. Several delegates were making distressed sounds. The concept of fighting to the death in an environment that was actively killing you was beyond the understanding of most species. Human pilots also demonstrated remarkable environmental adaptation, Gix added. I observed fighter craft operating in the upper atmosphere of a gas giant, where the pressure and chemical composition should have dissolved both the ships and their pilots within seconds. Admiral Reeves nodded. The mission required precise timing, and atmospheric entry was the only way to achieve the necessary tactical position. Our pilots volunteered for the assignment. How did they survive in conditions that would destroy purpose-built equipment? Gix asked. They improvised, Captain Stone explained. Emergency modifications to their suits, creative use of available materials for additional protection, and very careful mission planning. Plus, they did not need to survive for very long, just long enough to complete their objectives. Gix's display showed recordings of human soldiers adapting to various hostile environments by modifying their equipment and tactics in real time. I observed humans fighting in conditions ranging from absolute zero to temperatures that would melt most metals, Gix continued. They adapted to pressure differentials that would crush conventional life forms and radiation levels that would sterilize entire planets. In every case, they found ways to maintain combat effectiveness, despite environmental challenges that should have made military operations impossible. Environmental challenges are just another tactical variable, Admiral Reeves explained. We plan for difficult conditions and prepare our people to adapt when circumstances change. Every environment offers both obstacles and opportunities. But why do you deliberately seek out hostile environments for military operations? Gix asked. Most species avoid dangerous conditions when possible. Because our enemies avoid dangerous conditions too, Captain Stone replied. Fighting in hostile environments gives us tactical advantages, because we are more willing to accept environmental risks than most opponents. They worry about survival. We worry about mission completion. Counselor Alar called for the final recess of the day as the assembly struggled to process the implications of what they had learned. Human adaptability extended far beyond simple technological improvisation or tactical flexibility. They could literally reshape their understanding of physics, strategy, and environmental survival on demand during active combat operations while under enemy fire. The final session would feature the most disturbing testimony yet. Evidence that humans did not just excel at warfare despite their primitive origins, but because of them. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their tactics, but their fundamental approach to existence itself. The final session began with an atmosphere of anticipation and dread that seemed to press down on the assembly hall like a physical weight. 9 witnesses had already testified about human capabilities that defied every established principle of warfare, technology, and psychology, but everyone present understood that the most important testimony was yet to come. Prime Observer. Lan moved toward the platform with the ancient grace of a being that had witnessed the birth and death of entire galactic civilizations. Their species existed as pure consciousness inhabiting crystalline matrices that had been growing for millions of years, accumulating knowledge and wisdom across cosmic timescales. When a Prime Observer chose to speak, every intelligent species in the galaxy listened with complete attention. The crystal matrix that housed Lan's consciousness caught and refracted the assembly hall's lights, creating rainbow patterns that shifted and flowed like liquid starlight. When they spoke, their voice resonated with harmonics that seemed to come from the structure of space-time itself. I have observed warfare across this galaxy for 7 million years, Lon began, each word carrying the weight of eons. I have watched species rise from primitive tool users to masters of reality itself. I have documented the tactical evolution of countless civilizations, the development of technologies that reshape matter and energy, and the psychological progression that transforms simple survival instincts into sophisticated strategic thinking. The assembly fell completely silent. Even the human delegation sat without their usual casual confidence, recognizing that they were in the presence of something truly ancient and wise. In all my observations, across millions of conflicts involving thousands of species, I have documented one universal principle: intelligent life wages war to end war. Every species fights to achieve conditions that will allow them to stop fighting. Combat is viewed as a necessary evil, a temporary disruption of peaceful existence that must be endured to protect what they value. Lon's crystalline form pulsed with slow, rhythmic light patterns that seemed to hypnotize the watching delegates. Humans are the first exception I have encountered to this universal principle, Lan continued. Humans do not wage war to end war. They wage war because they find warfare intellectually stimulating and emotionally fulfilling. They seek out conflict not as a means to an end, but as an end in itself. Admiral Reeves shifted slightly in his seat, but his expression remained neutral. Captain Stone maintained her usual slight smile, but her eyes had become more alert. I monitored human communications throughout their conflict with the Hegemony Alliance, Lan stated. I analyzed not only their tactical coordination and strategic planning, but also their personal thoughts and private conversations. What I discovered challenges our fundamental understanding of intelligent behavior. The Prime Observer's holographic display activated, showing communication, patterns, and psychological analysis data that spanned the entire duration of the war. Humans deliberately chose the most difficult possible approach to every military challenge they faced, Lan announced. When presented with multiple tactical options, they consistently selected the methods that required the greatest skill, involved the highest risk, and offered the most opportunities for improvisation and creativity. The display showed decision trees mapping human tactical choices throughout various battles, with easier alternatives clearly marked and consistently rejected. During the Battle of Proxima Station, human commanders had 3 viable attack strategies, Lan continued. They could have bypassed the station entirely, negotiated for safe passage, or waited for the arrival of additional forces that would have ensured easy victory. Instead, they chose to attack immediately with insufficient numbers using improvised tactics that had never been tested in combat. Several delegates exchanged glances. The idea of deliberately choosing difficult options was incomprehensible to species that valued efficiency and success above all else. The humans made this choice not because it was necessary, but because it was interesting, Lan stated. I detected excitement and anticipation in their communications as they planned increasingly complex and dangerous operations. They appeared to derive genuine pleasure from solving tactical problems that other species would consider unsolvable. Admiral Reeves spoke up from his position in the witness section. Prime Observer, if I may clarify, we did not choose difficult approaches arbitrarily. We selected tactics that would provide the greatest learning opportunities and allow our personnel to develop their skills under challenging conditions. That is precisely my point, Admiral, Lan replied. Every other species fights to minimize risk and maximize the probability of survival. Humans fight to maximize learning and skill development. You treat warfare as an educational experience. The crystalline being's light patterns intensified, casting complex shadows across the assembly hall. I have documented specific instances where human forces deliberately allowed enemy fleets to escape when they could have been destroyed. Lan continued. Analysis of human communications revealed that they wanted their opponents to learn from their mistakes and come back with better tactics, because fighting improved enemies would be more educational than fighting demoralized. Once Captain Stone nodded. There is no point in fighting opponents who cannot offer meaningful resistance. We prefer enemies who challenge us to become better at what we do. You prefer enemies who might kill you, Lan observed. Well, yes, Captain Stone agreed. Victory without risk is just a waste of time. The Prime Observer's display shifted to show psychological analysis patterns that revealed the deep structure of human motivation during warfare. Most species experience increasing stress and psychological deterioration as conflicts become more intense and casualties mount, Lon explained. Humans display the opposite pattern. Their psychological profiles improve as warfare becomes more challenging. They become more creative, more coordinated, and more effective as their situation becomes more desperate. The display showed brain activity patterns and stress hormone levels that painted a picture of a species that literally thrived under pressure. Human soldiers fighting impossible odds demonstrated better tactical thinking, improved physical performance, and enhanced emotional stability compared to the same individuals in safe, routine situations, Lon continued. Your species appears to be psychologically optimized for crisis conditions. We evolved in a challenging environment, Admiral Reeves explained. Our homeworld required constant adaptation and problem-solving for survival. We developed psychological and physiological traits that help us perform well under pressure. Admiral, every species evolved in challenging environments, Lon replied. Survival pressures shaped the development of all intelligent life. But other species develop traits that help them avoid or minimize challenges. Humans develop traits that help them seek out and maximize challenges. The Prime Observer's form pulsed with colors that seemed to convey deep concern. I have identified the fundamental characteristic that makes humans unique among intelligent species, Lon announced. You do not fight for survival, territory, resources, or even ideology. You fight for the opportunity to discover what you are capable of achieving under extreme pressure. The assembly hall was completely silent now. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed muted. Humans use warfare as a laboratory for testing the limits of their capabilities, Lon continued. Every battle is an experiment designed to answer the question, what can we accomplish when everything we value is at stake? You deliberately create conditions where failure means death because those are the only conditions that reveal your true potential. Admiral Reeves was quiet for a long moment before responding. Prime Observer, that is. A very insightful analysis. We do believe that adversity brings out the best in people. Comfortable circumstances tend to make individuals and civilizations soft and complacent. But this psychological pattern has disturbing implications for galactic peace, Lon stated. If humans require challenging conflicts to maintain psychological health and continue developing their capabilities, then permanent peace would be harmful to your species. You need enemies, Captain Stone smiled. We prefer to think of them as learning partners rather than enemies. The relationship is mutually educational, even if not everyone survives the experience. The Prime Observer's display showed projections of human population growth, technological development, and territorial expansion over the next several centuries. Based on my analysis of human behavior patterns, I predict that your species will actively seek out increasingly challenging conflicts as your capabilities improve, Lon announced. You will not be satisfied with defeating enemies at your current level. You will seek out stronger opponents who can teach you new lessons about warfare and help you discover new aspects of your potential. The implications of this prediction sent waves of concern through the assembled delegates. A species that actively sought out stronger enemies was a threat to the entire concept of galactic stability. Furthermore, Lon continued, humans will not be content to limit their conflicts to military matters. You will apply the same experimental approach to political challenges, economic competition, technological development, and social evolution. You will treat every aspect of existence as an opportunity to test and expand your capabilities. Admiral Reeves stood up slowly. Prime Observer, your analysis is remarkably accurate. We do believe that challenge and competition drive progress and growth. We see conflict not as something to be avoided, but as the primary mechanism through which individuals and civilizations improve themselves. And what happens, Lon asked, when you have defeated every possible enemy and solved every available challenge? What will humans do when there are no more opportunities for growth through conflict? Admiral Reeves smiled, and for the first time during the proceedings, his expression contained something that made several delegates instinctively move away from him. We will find new challenges, the Admiral replied. The universe is a very large place, and we have barely begun to explore what it might teach us about ourselves. If we run out of enemies in this galaxy, there are other galaxies. If we exhaust all military challenges, there are challenges involving physics, consciousness, reality itself, Captain Stone added. Besides, by the time we solve all the obvious problems, we will probably have developed into something capable of creating entirely new categories of challenges that we cannot even imagine yet. The Prime Observer's crystalline form dimmed slightly,
As if the ancient consciousness was withdrawing into deep contemplation.
The Tribunal must understand, Lon said finally, that the Hegemony Alliance was not defeated by superior human technology, tactics, or strategy. They were defeated by a species that approached warfare as an art form to be perfected, rather than a problem to be solved. Humans did not fight to win. They fought to learn. Victory was simply a side effect of their educational process. The assembly hall remained silent as delegates struggled to process the full implications of this revelation. They had summoned this tribunal to understand how a primitive species had achieved an impossible victory. Instead, they had discovered that humanity represented a completely new category of intelligent life, one that treated the most serious challenges facing galactic civilization as opportunities for personal and cultural development. The question before this assembly, Lon concluded, is not how to prevent future human victories. The question is how to coexist with a species that views the entire universe as a laboratory for testing the limits of what intelligent life can achieve when everything is at stake. As the Prime Observer returned to their designated position, Counselor Alar realized that the tribunal had accomplished its goal of understanding human military capabilities. Unfortunately, that understanding was far more terrifying than anyone had anticipated. The galaxy was sharing space with a species that not only excelled at warfare, but actively enjoyed it as the ultimate form of self-expression and personal growth. The final session would determine how the galactic community would respond to this revelation. But one thing was already clear. The universe had become a much more interesting and dangerous place. The final deliberation session lasted 18 hours. Representatives from thousands of civilizations huddled in urgent conferences, analyzing the testimony and debating responses that ranged from immediate military action to complete diplomatic isolation. Emergency communications flashed between the assembly station and homeworlds across the galaxy as governments tried to understand what the tribunal's revelations meant for their survival. Counselor Alar had not slept during the entire deliberation period. His 4 eyes burned with exhaustion, but his mind remained sharp as he reviewed the testimonies one final time. The evidence was undeniable. Humanity represented something completely unprecedented in galactic history. The question now was how to respond to that unprecedented reality. The assembly hall was packed beyond capacity when the final session began. Representatives who had been unable to attend earlier proceedings had arrived via emergency transport. News networks from across the galaxy were broadcasting live coverage to billions of viewers. Everyone understood that whatever decision emerged from this tribunal would reshape the political structure of known space. Admiral Reeves and Captain Stone sat in their designated positions, looking as relaxed and confident as they had throughout the entire proceeding. They had listened to 9 witnesses describe their species as tactically unpredictable, technologically adaptive, psychologically resilient, and fundamentally driven by an insatiable desire for challenging conflicts. Their response had been to nod approvingly and offer helpful clarifications. Counselor Alar activated the Assembly's communication system, and his voice carried to every corner of the hall and across subspace to worlds throughout the galaxy. The tribunal has completed its investigation into human military capabilities and the circumstances surrounding the defeat of the Hegemony Alliance, Alar announced. After extensive deliberation, we have reached several conclusions that will require immediate action by the Galactic Federation and all member civilizations. The hall fell silent except for the soft humming of recording equipment and translation systems. First, Alar continued, the evidence clearly establishes that human victory over the Hegemony Alliance was not the result of superior technology, numerical advantage, or strategic surprise. The humans achieved victory through a fundamentally different approach to warfare that treats military conflict as an opportunity for intellectual and cultural development. Several delegates nodded grimly. The testimony had made this point impossible to ignore. Second, Human military capabilities continue to evolve rapidly through direct application of lessons learned during combat operations. Unlike other species, which tend to maintain stable tactical doctrines and technological capabilities, humans appear to improve their effectiveness with each engagement. Admiral Reeves smiled slightly. Continuous improvement was indeed a core principle of human military philosophy. Third, and most significantly, Alar paused, looking directly at the human delegation. Humans actively seek out challenging conflicts rather than attempting to avoid or minimize warfare. This psychological trait makes traditional, diplomatic approaches to conflict resolution ineffective when applied to human-involved disputes. Captain Stone whispered something to Admiral Reeves that made him chuckle quietly. Several nearby delegates moved farther away from the human section. Based on these findings, Alar announced, the Galactic Federation faces an unprecedented situation. We must develop new frameworks for interaction with a species that views warfare as entertainment and treats galactic stability as a potential obstacle to their personal development. The counselor activated a holographic display showing proposed policy recommendations that had emerged from the deliberation sessions. Multiple response strategies have been proposed and evaluated, Alar continued. Military containment was rejected as impractical, given demonstrated human capabilities and their apparent preference for fighting superior opponents. Economic isolation was rejected as ineffective, since humans seem capable of developing necessary technologies independently. Diplomatic pressure was rejected as counterproductive, since it would likely be interpreted as an interesting challenge rather than a deterrent. The display showed various strategic options, each marked with probability assessments and risk evaluations that painted a uniformly pessimistic picture. However, one approach emerged from our deliberations that may offer a practical solution to the challenge of human coexistence, Alar stated. This approach is based on Prime Observer Land's insight that humans require challenging conflicts to maintain psychological health and continue cultural development. Admiral Reeves leaned forward with obvious interest. Any solution that acknowledged human psychological needs was likely to be more successful than approaches based on traditional diplomatic assumptions. The Galactic Federation hereby establishes the Department of Human Engagement, Alar announced. This department will be responsible for identifying appropriate challenges and conflicts that can channel human capabilities in directions that benefit galactic civilization rather than threatening it. The implications of this announcement sent excited whispers through the assembly. The Federation was essentially proposing to manage human aggression by providing them with approved targets and objectives. The Department of Human Engagement will coordinate with human leadership to identify problems that require the unique combination of tactical innovation, technological adaptation, and psychological resilience that humans have demonstrated. Alar continued. These problems may include scientific challenges, exploration missions, infrastructure projects, and conflicts with entities that pose threats to galactic peace. Captain Stone raised her hand. Counselor Alar, this approach sounds very promising. Could you provide some examples of the types of challenges you have in mind? Alar consulted his notes. Preliminary discussions have identified several potential projects. The exploration of the galactic core region, where radiation levels and gravitational anomalies have prevented other species from establishing permanent research stations. The investigation of dark matter phenomena that require direct observation in environments lethal to most forms of life. The establishment of colonies in star systems with extreme environmental conditions that could serve as research bases for studying exotic physics. Admiral Reeves was nodding approvingly. Those sound like excellent learning opportunities. Do any of these projects involve potential combat situations? Some do, Alar replied. There are reports of hostile entities in several unexplored regions, including mechanical constructs of unknown origin that have attacked previous expedition fleets. There are also indications of aggressive life forms in certain star systems that have proven too dangerous for conventional exploration missions. Perfect, Captain Stone said with evident satisfaction. We prefer projects that combine scientific research with tactical challenges. It helps keep our people engaged and motivated. Alar continued with his presentation. The second major policy initiative involves the establishment of formal protocols for human military exercises and training operations. Rather than attempting to limit human combat activities, the Federation will provide designated areas where humans can conduct realistic training scenarios without endangering inhabited systems. The display showed charts marking proposed exercise zones in uninhabited regions of space. These training areas will include artificial challenges designed to test human capabilities while providing opportunities for other species to observe and learn from human tactical innovations, Alar explained. We believe that understanding human methods may help other civilizations improve their own defensive capabilities. Admiral Reeves stood up. Counselor, may I address the assembly directly? Alar gestured for him to proceed. The Admiral walked to the center of the hall, where his voice would carry clearly to all the assembled delegates. Members of the Galactic Federation, Admiral Reeves began, I want to thank you for the time and effort you have invested in understanding my species. The testimony we have heard over the past several days has been remarkably insightful and accurate. We are pleased that you recognize our capabilities and our motivations. He paused, looking around the hall at the thousands of representatives watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed fear. We accept your proposal to establish the Department of Human Engagement, the Admiral continued. We believe that formal coordination between human forces and Federation authorities will benefit everyone involved. We are eager to contribute our capabilities to projects that advance galactic knowledge and protect peaceful civilizations from external threats. Several delegates relaxed slightly. The Admiral's tone was reasonable and diplomatic. However, Admiral Reeves continued, and his smile became noticeably wider, I must clarify one important point that seems to have been misunderstood during these proceedings. Captain Stone joined him in the center of the hall, her own expression shifting to match his unsettling confidence. The war with the Hegemony Alliance was not our first military conflict, Admiral Reeves announced. It was our first galactic conflict. We have been fighting wars among ourselves for our entire recorded history. The tactics, technologies, and psychological approaches that you found so disturbing were developed through thousands of years of continuous warfare between human factions. The assembly hall became completely silent. This information had not appeared in any of the testimony or evidence presented during the tribunal. The Hegemony Alliance represented our introduction to galactic warfare, Captain Stone added. We considered it a learning experience that would help us understand how other species approach military problems. The techniques we used against them were basic applications of principles we learned fighting each other. Admiral Reeves nodded. We have been studying the combat capabilities of various galactic civilizations since we first achieved interstellar travel. We wanted to understand the local tactical environment before engaging in any serious conflicts. The implications of this revelation struck the assembly like a physical blow. The humans had not just accidentally stumbled into an effective approach to warfare. They had deliberately prepared for galactic military operations by studying their potential opponents and developing specialized techniques for fighting alien species. Furthermore, Admiral Reeves continued, our conflict with the Hegemony Alliance taught us valuable lessons about galactic political structures, technological capabilities, and psychological patterns that we have incorporated into our long-term strategic planning. Captain Stone smiled at the increasingly alarmed delegates. We are very much looking forward to the challenges that the Department of Human Engagement will provide. We expect to learn a great deal from exploring dangerous regions, fighting hostile entities, and collaborating with other species on complex projects. And, Admiral Reeves added, we are particularly excited about the training areas where other civilizations will observe our tactical methods. We believe that sharing knowledge about warfare will help everyone involved become more effective at what they do. We look forward to learning from your approaches as much as we hope you will learn from ours. The two humans returned to their seats, leaving the assembly to contemplate the full implications of what they had just learned. The Federation had not just agreed to manage human aggression by providing them with challenging projects. They had agreed to provide a species that treated warfare as an art form, with opportunities to study galactic military capabilities, test new tactical approaches, and share their methods with other civilizations. Counselor Alar realized that instead of solving the problem of human military superiority, the tribunal had revealed the much larger problem of human military ambition. The galaxy was not just sharing space with a species that excelled at warfare. They were sharing space with a species that had been preparing for galactic warfare since before they made contact with any other civilization. "The tribunal is concluded," Alar announced, his voice barely carrying across the silent assembly hall. "The Department of Human Engagement will begin operations immediately. All member civilizations are advised to review their defensive capabilities and consider how they might contribute to the challenges that will be provided to our human colleagues." As delegates began filing out of the assembly hall, urgent conversations breaking out in dozens of languages. Counselor Alar remained in his seat and watched the human delegation. Admiral Reeves and Captain Stone were discussing something in quiet, cheerful voices, occasionally gesturing toward the departing aliens with obvious enthusiasm. The tribunal had been convened to understand how humanity had achieved an impossible victory over the Hegemony Alliance. Instead, it had revealed that humanity viewed that impossible victory as a practice exercise for whatever challenges they intended to pursue next. Alar realized that the most terrifying aspect of the entire proceeding was not what the humans had accomplished in their first galactic war. It was the obvious fact that they considered that accomplishment to be just the beginning of their education. The galaxy had definitely become a more interesting place. Whether it would remain a habitable place for anyone except humans remained to be seen.